Hey, what's up, everybody? Chris Trapasso here for another episode of the Namless Football Show. Thank you for popping in tonight. We're taking it on the road today. It's a nice night here in Western New York. I wanted to just take a walk. What the hell that noise was. I wanted to take a walk and just to give it a little bit more of a casual feel. So it's not like I'm sitting in front of my desk. My back hurts a little bit. The kids weren't really the best at going to sleep just now. And yes, we put our kids to bed really early. I'm a big advocate of getting a lot of sleep myself over the last couple of years, and certainly my kids. And I see the difference. Like when they don't get a good night of sleep, or they're going to bed late because we're doing something on the weekend, or they're up really early, they're grouchy, they're crabby, they don't eat as well. It's the same as me. But yeah, this is not a show to talk about sleep advocacy. It's to talk about week 3 in the NFL. I want to start off, this is my one big thing at the beginning. I want to talk about one-score games. A lot of talk here in Western New York has been after the Bills lost 21-19 to the Dolphins about one-score games, and the reason why the Bills are 0-7 in their last. Go with my girls and sit down on a bench there. In one-score games in the Sean McDermott era, the Bills actually have a winning record in one-score games in which their starters are playing the full game. There was a game in 2019, last game of the season, in which the starters didn't play. Like Josh Allen played the first series because the Bills were already locked in to their seed in that 2019 playoffs, so they didn't play beyond like the first series. If you don't count that game, which why would you? The Bills are 20-19. It should have been, how are they so good in those games, is in one-score games. Think about it. Alabama, since 2007, has been the most prestigious, most winningest college football program. And take a guess what Alabama, with all the talent, all the depth, all the first-round picks, all the Heisman winners, take a guess what Nick Saban's record is, counting college football playoff bowl games, of course, in one-score games. It's 29-18, which certainly better than the Bills' record and a lot of other teams because there's just way less parity in college football. But compare that to Alabama's season win-loss record every year, winning 11, 12, 13 games. A 12-2 season in Tuscaloosa now is considered a bad season. But in those one-score games, they're only 29-18. That's not a crazy high win percentage. And that's just to show you that at the highest level of dominance in collegiate or professional football, even Nick Saban's Alabama Crimson Tide does not just beat every team up and always win those tight games, because whether it is a coaching mistake or a fluky bounce or a bad play by a special teamer or a missed throw by a quarterback or a missed block by an offensive lineman, those things are going to happen in those one-score games. So it's, to me, what we saw with the Bills. I don't think if you're a Bills fan, you have to be overly concerned. I think the way that the Chiefs lost against the Indianapolis Colts, both of those games are how elite teams lose. Alabama loses on a kick 6 against Auburn, 5, 6, 7 years ago. A lot of Alabama's losses have seemingly been fluky. Last year in the national title, Jamison Williams, the first-round receiver, goes down in the middle of that game. They didn't have John Mechie either. They ultimately lose. The Colts have a 4th and 15 where it looks like, or the Chiefs have the Colts down to a 4th and 15, and it feels like, oh, they're going to get the ball back, this game's over. Chris Jones gets an unsportsmanlike score games. I don't think that there's anything the Bills are doing, or any other team that's really struggling. The Lions of late, over the last 2 years in the Dan Campbell era, have lost a lot of one-score games. Regression happens, and regression doesn't just mean when you're good, you're going to ultimately regress to being bad. Regression also means just back to the middle. Regression to the mean is real. It occurs with every team. It's going to happen for the Bills. It will happen for the Detroit Lions, the teams that have been very fortunate to win a lot of one-score games. They will regress back to the mean as well. The Chiefs actually, in the Patrick Mahomes era, have been a little bit better than the Bills. I think they're right around where where the Alabama Crimson Tide are, that they're like 26-15, somewhere in that range in one-score games. They had a season a few years ago where they went 9-2 in one-score games. That was, I believe, 2020. They went 14-2. 2021, last year, they go 12-5, because you're just not going to be able to sustain that over and over again, especially in the parity-driven NFL. So one-score game records, I think in a given season, it could make or break a team from getting the number 1 seed, making the playoffs, whatever the case may be. But there's not really any magic formula that a team can deploy or utilize to say, hey, we're going to just be so good in those one-score games. One-score games are games where a bad bounce or something fluky, like I mentioned, ultimately determines the outcome. For the Bills, they've won 20 straight games by 10 or more points. 20 games in a row of 20 or more points. It's tied the 41 or 42 Chicago Bears for the NFL record. So if they beat the Ravens or the Steelers, whatever their next win is, by more than 10 points, they will be the owners of the all-time NFL record in most consecutive games won by 20 or more points. That's an Alabama stat. That's what Alabama does to teams in most occasions. It's those occasional, once-in-a-blue-moon tight games that Alabama has that they will lose, and that's not because they're bad or you got to be worried for Nick Saban's job or are they done or is Alabama not. Those games happen. You're not going to get every single bounce, and occasionally your opposition is going to get those bounces, and it's going to ultimately lead to you losing. Now, on the flip side of this, and again, I'm Chris Trapasso. This is the Nameless Football Show after week 3. Went on the road today. I'm at the park where I go a lot. We didn't come here today, but because it rained, but this bench is under a tree, so we don't have any rain on it. That philosophy that teams are not what their record. No, Steelers that were winning with a bunch of turnovers, sacks from TJ Watt. I don't think that, but the fashion in which they won felt like an Auburn team, an underdog Auburn team upsetting an Alabama team in Auburn, Alabama. Like it felt like that with all the injuries, the guys cramping from the Bills, everything that transpired in that game. And certainly, Josh Allen threw the ball that could have been intercepted about 2 or 3 times. He had a fumble early in the game, but to say that the Dolphins are the best team in the NFL, I'm not anywhere close to saying that yet. I still think the Chiefs, the Bills, maybe the Ravens, maybe even the Chargers, although they have really been struck by the injury bug. Losing Rashawn Slater is absolutely devastating. The chalk that we expected before the season of which teams are going to be the best, which are going to be the most formidable, the legitimate Super Bowl contenders, still remain intact. And that brings me to one of the surprising teams, the 2-1 and the Dolphins, and should the Bills be concerned? I think in general, though, most Bills fans understand that they should not be that concerned, and in general, they are not. I just wanted to get the point out there on one-score games in Alabama. The Jacksonville Jaguars, so I've watched every single throw from Trevor Lawrence through 3 weeks, and I haven't really been blown away. I haven't watched his film and thought, oh my, throwing the football into tight coverage when the throw really shouldn't be made, or making a throw way too late in the play, leading to an interception, or running into a sack in a clean pocket, creating pressure for himself. He's not doing that in this Doug Peterson offense. And I think hats off to Trevor Lawrence for his maturation, everything that I mentioned, pocket awareness, navigation, accuracy, throwing with rhythm and timing and accuracy has all been better. But also to Doug Peterson and the job that the front office did to bring in more talent to this Jaguars team. Christian Kirk has been very good. Zay Jones. I don't know if they've gotten the value out of those contracts yet, but they're getting positive contributions from those wide receivers. Brandon Scherf has been very good at the guard position. Travis Etienne and James Robinson look like a decently formidable running back duo. And the defense is playing, I don't want to say like 2017 Saxonville, but with Josh Allen, with Arden Key, who's playing up and down the line of scrimmage and making a lot of plays. Devin Lloyd, the first-round linebacker, who I was admittedly low on, and I posted a TikTok on that earlier this week, that he looks really good through these first 3 games. Now, having said that, and it is a great story, I wrote a story on it for CBS Sports. You can check that out. Just type in CBS Sports Chris Trapasso into Google. The first link that pops up will be my archive. You can read it right there. it'll be near the top of my archive. Like, are the Jaguars really good? And what I concluded was they're close to being good. They've still given up more 20-plus yard gains on defense, 12 of them, than they've gained on offense, 11 of them. So it's not like they're completely dominating their opponents and they're just lighting fireworks every time they touch the football offensively. Now, over the last 6 quarters, or I guess 2 games against the Colts, shutting out the Colts, and then what they did to the kind of banged up Los Angeles Chargers, very impressive. Certainly more impressive than the loss to the Commanders in week 1, in a game, a 1-score game that they were in for most of that contest. They're second in the NFL in point differential, which I'm a huge believer in, because the last 6 Super Bowl winners have all been in the top 6 of point differential. And that's it. It would be the nice clean top 5, but last year the Rams were actually 6th in point differential, and they broke the streak of top 5 point differential teams winning the Super Bowl. And it's something like 8 of the last 10. So, like, when you want to be betting on the playoffs, or you just want to think or know which teams could actually win the playoffs when it comes to the end of the regular season, look for that top 5 or top 6 in point differential, regardless of playoff seeding or team record. Those are the best teams. And it kind of is baked into what we just mentioned at the beginning about 1-score game record, how many teams you're blowing out, how many close games you're losing. That those are going to happen, and that's okay, because you're going to eventually, if you do lose 3 or 4, in the Bills' case 6 in a row or 7 in a row, you're going to regress back to the mean eventually and win some of those close games. So the Jaguars, I don't want to jump on the hot take bandwagon and say, yes, they're so good, they're a Super Bowl contender. From what I've seen, they have made noticeable strides, but they're coming from a place that was drastically bad last season in pretty much all phases. So they play the Eagles this weekend. I think the Eagles are going to win the game. It might be one of those 1-score games, because they're 2 teams that are built pretty similarly. The Eagles do have a better offensive line, probably a better defensive line, but it's close. 2 athletic young quarterbacks that haven't made a ton of big-time throws, but certainly can do it, especially Lawrence. The AFC South, that I think is very watered down. I don't think they're ready to be contenders. So for as much as it would be a great traffic generator, or for me to say, yes, I cannot sit on that bench because it is completely soaked. All right. Again, I'm Chris Trapasso. This is the Namless Football Show. The Dolphins are for real this year from Yankees fan. Secondary that was severely banged up. A Bills secondary that had no Micah Hyde, no Jordan Poyer, no Dane Jackson, no Tre'Davious White. And then Christian Menford, the rookie from Villanova, 6th-round pick, who's played well in training camp, well in the preseason, fine in the first 2 games, gets injured in the first half. So you literally, if you're Tua and you're Mike McDaniel, you're happy about winning. You're glad on that 3rd and 22 throw that Tua pulled the trigger, made an accurate throw down the field. But you literally were facing the Bills' backup secondary. I want to see it for a longer stretch against a team that is not almost unprecedentedly injured, like what the Dolphins and Tua were able to exploit. And, good for them. Like, they did what they were supposed to do against a backup, really banged up second, but completely torched either like that defense. And in the first half against the Ravens, he did not look very good either. But yes, they are for real in that we need to take them seriously. They're going to be a marquee team for any opponent that they face. They are legitimate AFC wildcard contenders. They are AFC East contenders, and with a very blitz-happy, opportunistic defense, the speed that they have at wide receiver, and I think a pretty good head coach in Mike McDaniel, they're definitely an upstart team that is not just rebuilding anymore. I think they're ready to take the next step. The Buccaneers will win the Super Bowl. I think if they finish in the top 6, they could. Absolutely. Chris, what's up, man? Love when I get on here and see you live. Johnny, what's up, man? Good to see you. Chiefs are a first-round exit. They certainly need to get things right offensively. The first 2 weeks, it didn't seem like that. But last week against the Colts, it kind of felt like obviously the first game only scoring 17 points that they kind of missed Tyreek Hill. But I think they will. And that's where last year the Chiefs started 1-2, and everyone was like, what's wrong with the Chiefs? And then they were fine. And they were a bad second half in the AFC title game away from going to another Super Bowl, their third straight Super Bowl. So I don't think the Chiefs, to me, don't feel like a first-round exit team. I think their defense is a little bit better. Even if Patrick Mahomes and this kind of patched together offense doesn't take off and play like a Patrick Mahomes offense like we've seen over the last 4 years, the defense to me is better, and I think that's why they will not be a first-round exit. All right. I traded Pitts and Higgins for Aaron Jones and Keenan Allen and Knox. I traded Pitts and Higgins for Aaron Jones, Keenan Allen, and Knox. Thoughts? I like it. I think to get 3 players back, Aaron Jones, the Packers certainly want to be very invested in him. They're going to emphasize the run game, even if A.J. Dillon is sprinkled in a little bit more. To get Keenan Allen as he's injured, you kind of buy him low. You're going to probably get good return on him once he returns, even if Justin Herbert's a little bit banged up. And Dawson Knox signs this big extension before the season, and he's been hardly used in this Bills offense. So I think his breakout game or stretch of games is coming pretty soon. Start Marquise Brown, T. Higgins, or Curtis Samuel. I don't have the Week 4 schedule memorized at this point, but I think I would actually lean Marquise Brown because it feels like Kyler Murray and Marquise Brown have that connection from their time spent together at Oklahoma, where Marquise Brown is getting targeted underneath on the quick game stuff that Cliff Kingsbury certainly incorporates, the downfield stuff that's a staple of the air raid offense, and then even at the intermediate level. How do you think Thibodeau did yesterday? You know what? I was meaning to watch him tonight. I did watch most of that game live. I didn't see any major wins or major losses for Thibodeau, like he looked terrible or he looked tremendous. I'll have to get back to you on that. Maybe I'll post an article on it because it was a pretty big debut for a top 5 pick that had a lot of hype, really starting from his high school career. All right. Is Chubb, Godwin, and Everett for Kelsey, Fournette, and Thielen a good trade? Yeah, that's a pretty good trade. That's pretty even. I think you should pull that one off. I don't know which side you're getting. If you're trading away Chubb, Godwin, and Everett, but you're downgrading a little bit at running back. You're upgrading at tight end. And wide receiver, maybe a little bit of a downgrade to go from Godwin to Thielen, but Godwin's hurt. Let's see. How far do you see the Packers going? It's kind of the same thing that I talked about with not overreacting, and certainly records matter. You know, a game here or there could ultimately be the difference in getting the 1 seed or the 2 seed. The Packers are 2-1. I don't see any reason to be concerned. Again, they're kind of like the Chiefs to me, that even if the offense without the superstar, if that offense never becomes as efficient as it was in the Devontae Adams era, the defense, I really think, I don't think the Chiefs defense is to the level of the Packers defense, but the Green Bay defense to me is so much better than it was even a couple years ago. I think up front with Rashawn Gary and Preston Smith and Kenny Clark, the linebackers have looked very good. Devondre Campbell, even Quay Walker, who I was definitely not high on whatsoever, would not have picked him in the first round. He's looked good. The secondary is pretty solid. I could see them again being near the top of the NFC going into the playoffs. And then it just really all comes down to winning a 1-score game. Like, they've had a lot of times where they've been a 1 seed or a 2 seed and they are disappointing in the playoffs. It kind of feels like, if you're really believing in the law of probability, that they're probably going to eventually win one of those tight games and get deep into the playoffs. Yeah, sorry about the connection. I don't know why I didn't have great connection here. Drop Claypool for Jamal Williams. If you have a solid receiver group and you can deal with not having Chase Claypool, I would do it. I think DeAndre Swift's being injured. He's going to be out for a while, and that's a really good offensive line in Detroit. Jamal Williams has not been as explosive as DeAndre Swift, and he's probably never going to be. They want to run the football as that offensive line gets a little bit healthier with Frank Ragnow coming back. They're going to run the ball, and they're going to run it well, regardless of who the running back is. Let's see. 1 QB. Should I do Hurts and Sutton for Russ and Jim? 1 QB, so it's a 1 QB league. Should I do Hurts and Sutton for Russ and Jamar? Jamar Chase? Hurts and Sutton for Russ and Jamar. Yeah, I think that'd be okay, because it seems decently even. I mean, you're kind of splitting up your Russell Wilson, Cortland Sutton stack. Or actually, you're trading away Hurts and Sutton for Russ and Jamar. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty even. Any early week 4 bets you're high on, I got to start getting onto those early because I'm a big believer that you want to try to get ahead of Vegas. After Vegas gets a ton of bets in, they see what the public thinks. They can move the lines and say, hey, look, there's a ton of people betting on the Chiefs. Let's move the line this way and move the line that way. Betting at like 12:59 Eastern on a Sunday, I think is the worst time to bet. So I haven't seen a ton of those yet. I do have a feeling. I talked a lot about the Bills. I think the Bills-Ravens, high scoring. I think it was 53.5. We thought that we were going to get this shootout in Miami. The temperature didn't do that. Now, if we do get some remnants from the hurricane in Baltimore, that could change things a little bit. But those are 2 banged-up secondaries and 2 really high-end quarterbacks that are playing very well, playing good football. And they have all their complements of receivers that are still pretty healthy. That game, I think, over 53.5. All right, should I trade Najee for Jalen Hurts? If you can get Jalen Hurts by trading Najee Harris, absolutely. Unless you're pretty good at quarterback, but it feels like if you're wanting to trade for Jalen Hurts, that you probably need a quarterback. Oh, it's 52 Bills, Ravens. I think over. Should I start Jared Goff over Russell Wilson? I wouldn't. I mean, I think the start has been really weird in Denver, but I think Russell Wilson will eventually right the ship. I mean, he elevated so many lesser offenses in Seattle, and I think Nate Hackett, Sutton, Judy, Okuigbunam, they'll eventually Okuebanam. I was saying it wrong from the Missouri days where all those announcers when he was at Missouri would say Okuigbunam, and it's Okuebanam, the tight end. I think they'll eventually get it right, and Jared Goff will have a big game here or there, but I think in general, lower volume and just doesn't have that potential. So I would start Russell Wilson. Cardinals being an underdog to the Panthers seemed weird to me. Are they at home? Is that game in Arizona? The Cardinals secondary, it's a group that, I mean, I'm talking about the Bills and the Ravens and the Titans as secondaries that are kind of banged up. The Cardinals really just don't have the pieces. They have Budda Baker and Byron Murphy, and beyond that, it is a secondary that is just, before the season and entering week 1, looked like one of the most susceptible secondaries in the NFL, and they've been like that. Or it's been a very susceptible secondary through these first couple of weeks. Pick up Romeo Doubs on the waiver wire. Yes, do it now. He's getting the rapport with Aaron Rodgers. I think Aaron Rodgers is having faith in him a little bit more. We saw 8 catches for 70-plus yards. Not a crazy big performance, but they're getting him the football. They're featuring him, and I think he's clearly going to stay ahead of Christian Watson, which kind of felt like what was going to be the case. If he was more NFL ready, maybe Christian Watson has more upside because he's bigger and more athletic. But yes, if you need wide receiver and you can get Romeo Doubs on your waiver wire, put in a pretty big claim for him because I think he will be that 5 to 6 catch per game type, even as a rookie in that Packers offense. All right, one more question, and then I'm going to head back into the house for just and this was a different locale, a different feel for the Nameless Football Show today. I wanted to get outside, really soak in these last couple of warm weather weeks, hopefully months, probably not months, maybe a month here in Western New York before it turns a little bit colder and there's going to be some snow on the ground. Thoughts on Jeff Wilson, worth a flex position week 4? Is Elijah Mitchell hurt? Why am I not remembering this? I did watch a fair amount of that 49ers game, and Jeff Wilson looked good as a runner. If you want to bank on knowing what Kyle Shanahan is going to do with his running backs, then go ahead. But I think in general, I tend to stay away from those 49ers running backs because one week it can be one guy. He really almost does it like Bill Belichick and says, hey, it's going to be the hot hand. One week it's going to be Elijah Mitchell. The next week it's going to be Jeff Wilson. Those guys all have been getting hurt. Mitchell is hurt. I knew that. I thought he got hurt like in week 3. All right, that'll do it for me today. I'm Chris Trapasso. This was the Nameless Football Show. Thanks for popping in. Until next week, see you later.